let's go ahead and get started with our discussion on networking. Looks like we're missing some people, but I'm sure they'll filter in.
Parkway's a nightmare.
What's that?
Parkway's a nightmare.
Traffic on the Parkway. All right, well, they'll definitely get here in time for our networking part, which will be later in the class. So we'll talk for a minute about networking, your thoughts on it, my thoughts on it, some structure to help us be more effective networkers. Then we will practice our elevator pitch individually with people as we mingle about in our networking party. I brought some seltzer. Looks like we've already got some cookies or whatever there. So we'll at least have seltzer and cookies to practice with. And then we will do networking or elevator pitches one at a time and give each other feedback. And we should have a good half an hour, 40 minutes remaining in class. If anyone needs to do their technical presentation or would like to get feedback on that, I will be here towards the end of the class to do that if anyone needs to. Did anyone have any questions about assignments or anything, submission, logistics, anything like that? One thing I just remembered, after we finish the elevator pitch work, I will go over your assignment that is due next week, which I believe is the bad news email. I'll just read through that. We'll get a little 5-minute discussion going on it. Get some ideas about how you might use the techniques we talked about writing last week to apply to this assignment. So, with that, I will dive into our networking discussion. First question, let's talk about the networking benefits. Or hold on, what is networking? Let's get a definition of networking. Someone starts off with that? Matt.
Just getting your name out there. What you do, what you're about, this business.
Getting your name out there to people. Yes, what you do, what you're about. Christian.
Connecting with different people for a mutually beneficial relationship.
Okay, good. Connecting with different people, mutual beneficial relationship, or maybe just a beneficial relationship for you at first, and then hopefully you can add value at some point. Michael?
Or eventually meet people that might benefit from down the road or something like that.
Yes, yes, yes. Just
Impress your potential recruiter.
do what?
Impress your potential recruiter.
Oh, impress your potential recruiter. Okay, fantastic. So give a little head start on your recruiter, someone you might interview with later. Talk to them a little bit at some sort of event. So, getting your name out there, talking to people, what are the benefits? Where does this lead? How does this help you specifically? Employment, yes. You get a job. How else could it help? More sales. You'd be talking to someone you meet in an elevator about something your company offers. They could become a client, get more business, Matthew? Friends, yeah. We should be sincere when we network, and we may meet actual friends. And it's great if we have a sincere connection with someone who's in our industry. That's great.
Increase your business profile.
Yes, increase your business profile. More known. I like it.
You can get connections and you can get useful advice from experienced people.
Useful advice, information. Excellent. Lena?
That's what I was going to say, industry information, where you might want to go, information, connection.
Absolutely. So I've summarized it this way. I like acronyms with 3 of the same letters. I've got my I benefits for networking. Information, as Olga said, what's going on in the industry, what do I need to know? Introductions, people could introduce you to a recruiter, someone who might just sit down with you, guide you a little bit on how you should shape your career. And this third one I had to fudge a little bit to make it work with the I, but I think it works. Employment, you get a job, someone could help lead us to something that could get a job, maybe now, maybe in the future. Specifically with employment, I wanted to throw this figure out. Referrals account for 60 to 90% of job placements. I had a couple different sources on that. Resume Bear and TamaraJacobs.com said between 60 and 90%. What's that mean? Referrals account for 60 to 90% of job placements.
So out of 10 people, 6 to 9 people that jump to somebody else put their resume into the hiring person or agency or whatever.
Yes. So we'll look at 90% for now. So 9 out of 10 people who get jobs, they know someone who somehow was involved in getting them the job. Someone mentioned them to the recruiter, someone brought them in, someone told them about the job. The 10% of people who got the job, they got it a different way. They got it by answering the ad, they got it through going through channels where they didn't get involved in any network. That's a pretty impressive statistic. So 9 out of 10 people get the job in some part due to networking, and 10% are all the resumes that are submitted on whatever, monster.com, jobseeker.com. So it's very important when we think about using this to benefit our career just from the employment standpoint. Concerns. So with all these great things that networking accomplishes for us, why are we often reluctant to do it? Why do we not do it more often? Mike?
Like fear of rejection or just opening yourself up, talking to different people?
Yeah, just fear. We're insecure. Great one. I like that. Insecurity. What else?
Uncomfortable, like maybe you don't know what to say or how you should say it.
Okay. So yeah, that might go with insecurity, and we'll work tonight on specifically what you should say. What else?
It could be an introvert.
Okay. Yeah. Does anyone say they fall into that category, that this going to company presentations and trying to network is just difficult for them because of their introverted personality? Yeah, absolutely. Other concerns, other things that prevent us.
Not maybe prepared to use the opportunity as such.
Okay, so lack of preparedness. All right. One thing I'll talk about as we get to the end is we want to be ourselves and we want to be unique. But that just doesn't mean you walk into the networking event and say, I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to say what comes naturally. What we'll learn is it takes a lot of work to be yourself. It takes a lot of work to think about what's important to you, what your goals are, how those goals mesh with this these recruiters you might be talking to. How do you fit into this industry? It takes a lot of work. Blake.
I also want to add one thing, like, you also, when you network, want to know what you can contribute for this other person or for this other company, so you don't always necessarily know what needs they have or what their issues are or how you solve them.
Okay, so we've got an unknown, and we also have a feeling maybe we're imposing on someone else. We don't know if we're going to be able to reciprocate that. Grace?
And also you'll need the opportunity to talk to the person, and maybe a lot of people want to talk to them.
Oh, yes. Yes, so that's why we may not network effectively. We may be standing around with 10 people who look exactly like us and want the same thing, and the recruiter is trying to field questions from all of them. And it's difficult, so we need to think about where can we find these opportunities. Jinfu?
Just too different between me and the recruiter or someone else. I mean, that position or culture or even industry, we just have so less in common. So I found topic or anything to talk about.
Okay, so it's hard to find things to talk about. That's an interesting one. How do we get over this problem? How do we solve that? Does everyone hear what Chinfu said? It's hard. He doesn't know what to talk about when he's in a recruiting situation. Okay.
So the one thing I try to use is more open-ended question. It's like,
Okay.
Instead of us talking about ourselves, we ask, so what kind of projects you're working on currently? That can kind of maybe help you lead another conversation.
Okay, so open-ended questions is a way to spark more of a conversation rather than just a yes or no. Are you hiring? No. Well, what sort of things have you hired for in the past? That might be a better way to answer the question. But let's get back to Chinfu's point. He doesn't know what to talk about with the recruiter. So what do you talk about with the recruiter? Talk about the football game?
You might even start off and ask him what his position is in the company, maybe just as like an icebreaker.
Yes, yes. Well, you talk about the recruiter's position, you talk about your interest in the position. Hopefully you're in an industry that you find exciting. So you will hopefully have some common ground with that. We'll talk a little bit later that I hope you all have found that or finding that or thinking about how there's an honest sincerity in your voice, in your words, when you say, I like this thing about the industry. I see myself here in 10 years and I'm really excited about that. Because nobody wants you somewhere where you're just going to be faking it. Nobody wants you to be the person who just kind of glides along and says, well, maybe I want to be here, maybe I don't. No, there should be some excitement, some passion in what you're doing. So concerns, we talked about all these. You might be insecure, you might feel like you're imposing. Also insincerity, we didn't really talk about that. Some people feel like networking is being fake. Let's address each of these. Start with the insecurity. How do we get over that fear of rejection? How do we get over that fear of opening ourselves up, being an introvert? Halima.
I think it's practice. You gotta just keep doing it and then get used to it. So practice what you're gonna say. Practice yourself in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Here.
I would go to more of these fairs.
Go to where?
Go to more of these like job fairs.
Okay.
Because you gotta get used to it. So one of the things I played a lot of sports before, and I used to play a lot of soccer. And so now I would just say to myself, like I've been there, I've done that, I can do it again. So if you go to more of these things, maybe you can have that mentality. If they've been there, done that, you can do it again. So.
Absolutely. So I would say practice is important, and I would also think about specific techniques, like going through and understanding our goals and working on our elevator pitch. Because at the end of this job fair, how do you know if you did a good job or not? You need some sort of basis. My goal is this, and this is my technique to accomplish that goal. It's my elevator pitch. And at the end of the job fair, you may say, I didn't really get to say that I work with these clients, and that would be especially relevant to that recruiter. That kind of stuff will be going through your head. But if you don't have a plan, I wouldn't necessarily say just go practice more and more. Because you might say, well, I just kind of roamed through. I wasn't really sure if I did a good job or not. But we need a plan and we need practice. Jim?
Focus on your strengths and not your weaknesses.
Absolutely. You want to be talking to the people you're networking with about what you're strong at. Don't dwell on what you're weak at. For insecurity, I recommend these two things: self-assessment and strategy. Think about where you're strong, think about what you're trying to accomplish, and have a strategy for that. And you'll realize, I think you'll realize, that there's nothing wrong with that. There's no reason you should feel insecure about approaching someone. Everyone starts their career somewhere. Most people go through transitions. You all may be going through a transition right now. And you just think about your strategy. This is how I'm going to accomplish my goals. I need to talk to this recruiter. I need to send an email to someone I talked to a couple years ago and ask him for a favor. Right?
Well, add to your accomplishment, think of something that you did, like something you accomplished, and then maybe you can build on that. That will give you more security.
Yeah, absolutely. So not only what you need to accomplish, but what you did accomplish to help you get over this insecurity. Imposition. We're imposing on someone. How do we get over that concern? Deal with that concern? Blake?
Realize that everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone's imposing on their recruiter. So
Yeah.
you're not somebody else though.
Okay, absolutely. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Has anyone heard that before? Yeah, make yourself known. It's all part of the game. Everyone understands it. And if you're sincere about this strategy, then it's okay. You're not being fake. You're not saying I want you to help me do something for some sort of shady purpose. You say, this is a career I'm excited about, and I truly want your input. I truly want you to know that I'm excited. For imposition, let me erase that for a minute. For the first couple of years I taught this, I just said that I think people like helping other people. When you ask someone for help, more often than not, they would say, yeah, I would be happy to help someone. Someone maybe you knew at a past company who was working in a certain industry. Now that you're more interested in that industry, you might reach out to that person. You might reach out to someone you went to undergrad with and say, hey, I'm here at Rutgers. I see on the alumni database that you're working for this company. I would suggest to you that people actually like helping you. People like helping others. Do you all agree with that? Is there anyone who disagrees with that? Oh.
I can disagree with it because sometimes some people are jealous regarding your goals, for example, or your achievements as well. And when you're seeing someone, oh, I'm working for the project that will bring me, like, I don't know, success or money, some people would say like, no, excuse me, I don't know how to do it, but they would definitely have this information, you know.
So they would judge your goals. And they would say, I don't like
They
what
would
you're
judge
doing.
your success, not goals, your success.
Oh, they would say that you can't be successful at this?
They can say you can be successful, but they won't be helpful to achieve the success.
Oh, okay. So if they think your goal is not realistic, they're not going to want to help you?
If they think it's realistic, because of being jealous, they won't be able to help you. They will refuse to help you.
If they're jealous, you said?
Yes, people
Okay.
can be jealous about someone else's success.
Okay, okay. Fair enough. Let's come back to that one. So sometimes people might be jealous and they might try to sabotage you. Alright, let's come back to that one. Let me just suggest for now that I think it is often true, and researching this, I found a concept psychologists call the helper's high, which is actually a physiological thing that happens to people when they help other people. Currently, social scientists believe that this has been important to our development as human beings, that we like helping each other. So we form stronger civilization, we form stronger social and family bonds. People often like helping each other, physiologically. The other reason why your imposition is not so grave is because people you ask for help often use you as an opportunity to strengthen their network. They send you for an informational interview with someone in their company and you do a good job. That's a very positive reflection on them. Better yet, you get a job in their company. You are now in their network. You're someone they helped get a job. They could call on you and ask you what's going on in that department. Someone else asks them for help. They could use you as a reference point. The natural inclination to want to help people and the natural inclination to want to build our network, I think, are powerful things that we don't think about because we're scared, we're nervous, we're at a transition in our career, we're afraid no one's going to help us. And I'll talk a little bit more about this imposition. But let's get back to Olga's comment before I move on. People are jealous and might not want to help you. How would we get around that obstacle or identify that problem? Matthew?
Make that person feel important. I think if you put them above you for a second, then they'll be more likely to help you.
Okay, make them see you less as a threat and more as a mentee. Yeah. Rajiv?
I was going to say, find another person.
Yes.
Find another person. Absolutely. Can you think back to experiences in your life when one person just soured you on something, and years later you thought, gosh, that person was just an idiot. Now that I'm not a teenager anymore, I realize they were just being silly. So find another person. Don't worry about them. Other ways we could overcome this jealous person? Alright, those are some good ideas. So in terms of insincerity, sometimes people are afraid that they're going to seem fake. I suggest an honest self-assessment and an honest strategy. Just like we talked about with the self-assessment and strategy for insecurity. As long as you're being honest about what your goals are, as long as you have a sincere, this is the company I want to work for, sincere, this is the industry I'm in, and that will reflect in your words, in your tone. I don't think people will call you insincere. People might call you fake if they feel like, oh, you just want to work for this company because it's the big name and it makes the most money and you memorized a few facts on the website last night. And if that's the way you're presenting yourself, then I would suggest you just dig a little deeper. Think about, is this truly what I want? And let me find some reasons how I can sincerely resonate that this is what I want. I want to talk more about this imposition concern, and I want to give you an example about donating to a charity. Let's think about this concept of a helper's high, that people like helping other people. In particular, they might like giving to a charity. And we'll ask ourselves why. Why do people like donating to a charity? And we'll use that analogy to think about why they might like helping us with our networking strategy. A good charity example. A good charity has a clear, inspiring, realistic plan. That's the kind of charity we would donate to. I understand what you're doing, I'm inspired by it, and it's realistic. You can help the hungry people in this part of New Jersey. It's clear, seems like a good, inspiring plan, and it's realistic. It can be accomplished. Same thing when you approach someone in a networking context. If you have a clear, inspiring, and realistic plan, they're going to be more likely to help you. A good charity also has efficient and ethical operations. You don't want to donate to a charity that's just going to waste your money. So, when we're networking, we want to show people that we are going to make use of their time. If they go out on a limb and introduce us to one of their colleagues, we're going to make a positive representation of them. A good charity achieves results. We want to donate to a charity that actually does feed people, or actually does make a difference in some sort of health global issue. We want to show our networking context that we can accomplish results. Circle back with them and say, hey, that 15 minutes you spent explaining your career really paid off for me. Thank you so much. It's going to make them want to help you in the future. Impact. I guess impact and appreciation are similar to results. So not only do we want to show our networking contact that we achieved results, but specifically it was what they did to help us. The one person they introduced us to made a big difference. And of course, circle back and say thank you. Another way we can deal with not being too imposing is doing something called ghostwriting. Does anyone know what ghostwriting is? Writing stories about ghosts. Siddharth? Writing for someone else, exactly. So how would we use ghostwriting in a networking context? Suppose you ask someone else to write you a letter of recommendation. Has anyone written their own letter of recommendation before? Yes, that is ghostwriting. You are writing on behalf of someone else, and then you send it to them, and they may change a period or a comma or something and say, all right, great. What other things could you ghostwrite, which would make it easier on your networking contacts? Emails.
I was going to say maybe like your emails or the way you connect them to LinkedIn or something like that. Have a little bit of a template and then just use it with their names and what you do.
Yes. So you connect with someone on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see you're connected with this person.
Yeah.
Could you send an introduction and maybe write these 2 sentences which would sum up how I could be valuable to their company? I see your hand somewhere. Okay. Ghostwriting is a way you can effectively move your networking process forward and take pressure off the imposition of people you're working with. Goal setting. I asked you to come up with some goals because I feel like goals are important to specific results. Do you all agree? Does anyone want to say a word for yes, goals really help you with specific results? All right, we'll talk more about this as we continue with this example. I want to mention a goal-setting study which shows exactly this. Goals produce specific results. A study that was done way back in 1979 with a bunch of Harvard MBAs. It was over 10 years, and then they did it again. They did it in like, I don't know, 1990 to early 2000s and had similar results. This guy, Mark McCormick, in 1979, he asked these Harvard MBAs who were graduating, do you have specific written goals? 3% said, yes, I have specific written goals. 13% said, I have mental goals. 84% said, no, I do not have any goals in mind. 10 years later, what do you think happened? went back and he said, how much money do you make? And who do you think made more money? People who had specific goals. Money is not everything, but it is an important factor, especially when we're evaluating business and career success. Perfect. Definitely not everything, but a way to consider how successful we are. On average, group 2 individually earned twice as much as group 3. It's not the impressive thing. On average, group 1 individually earned 323 times as much as group 1 and group 2 individually. Yeah, 323 times. Money is not everything, but these specific goals can help us achieve results, especially if our results are related to something that can be clearly defined in business. Goal setting is important. It's essential to our strategy. It's pretty much impossible to have a strategy without goals. If you don't have goals, you're just wandering around. How do you know if you're successful at achieving what you want to achieve? Well, I don't know, I was just wandering around for the last 5 years. I did what seemed to work the best. Goals are essential to receiving assistance. If I don't know what your goals are, how can I help you? If you walk into my office and say, hey, I want to do something. Okay, what do you want to do? Is there someone I can introduce you to? Is there somehow I can guide you? Is there courses I might recommend you take? If you don't have a goal, obviously I can't assist you. It's important, I think, that you have goals. It's also okay to realize that those goals can change. You might have a variety of things you're interested in, a variety of talents, and I think that's fantastic. But I find it's most effective to concentrate on one thing at a time. I mentioned my story briefly. I used to be an actor years and years ago, and then I was doing this sales role, and I went to business school, worked in finance, and now I coach people on public speaking. You might imagine if I had tried to do all of those things at the same time, it wouldn't have really worked. I would say, hey, if you can get me on Baywatch, that's great. Also, if you need help with finance, I can help you out with that too. Or if you want to come to my public speaking class, we'll all have fun together. So I concentrated on one thing at a time. I'm not saying I've gotten completely where I want to be, I'm still moving forward, but even if you have a lot of interests, I think it's important to focus on one at a time. This brings us to our elevator pitch, which is a key networking tool. Concise statement of who you are, what you do professionally, and how the person you're networking with can help you. I have a format that I favor. I recommend you start with your name, say a little bit about your brand, a little bit about your value, a little bit about the next steps, how you might connect with this person. I'll start at the top. It's always important to introduce yourself. It's always important to say your name when you introduce yourself. Sometimes we might forget that if we get nervous. I think that's a good starting point. Second thing I'd recommend you say in your elevator pitch is what I call your brand. Now this is just what you do or aspire to do professionally. The reason I use the term brand is I'd encourage you to think about it the same way a company brands itself. A company might have a catchy slogan. A company might have something that is memorable to their consumers. I'd encourage you to think along those lines. This is what I do. This is a memorable way to sum up what I do. It's exciting when I say it. I provide virtual office space. I train people on public speaking. I deliver business solutions for IT companies. Something succinct that could potentially be like a brand statement for a company. Third thing I'd recommend you do is think about how you could be valuable to the person you're talking to. You could be valuable to the person you're talking to just because they might hire you. It's easy to forget that when we're in an environment where we're looking for a job, everyone else is looking for a job, and we don't think we have value. We think we're just being annoying because we're trying to get a job. But if they're looking for someone to fill a role, they're hoping you are that person. And if you are, they're going to be happy. And that is an extremely important service for them, to be that person who can fill the role they need. Other ways you might provide value to your networking contacts: you could keep them informed about what's going on in your industry, keep them informed about what's going on in your little section of the company. You might sell them something valuable. Say, if you ever need virtual office space, let me know. Here's my business card. You might need it. That might be valuable. Lastly, some sort of follow-up, next steps. We talk to someone on an elevator, they get off. We don't wait until we see them again on the elevator. We need to connect with them somehow. And I suggest you think of a few ending scenarios, ways that you might stay in touch with that person. So as the elevator door is closing, you don't have this awkward, let's call me sometime, or, you know, let's go out, oh wait, no, I meant, yeah. So just think of 3 or 4 ways you might connect with someone. Let's connect on LinkedIn, and we can be supportive of each other professionally. Would it be all right if I had your business card to do that? Maybe I could have 15 minutes of your time next week to ask you some questions about how you got to your position. Could I have your business card and perhaps follow up with that opening you mentioned? Or if there are future openings, maybe we could follow up then. Any questions on that? Comments on that? Few pointers. Elevator pitch has to be concise, under 30 seconds. It needs to be conversational. You don't want someone to think you're giving them a prepared speech. Now it's tough because it is a prepared speech. But you need to think about making it as conversational as possible. With that, I would recommend that you write it out as spoken. This is not something that's going to take you too long because it's a 30-second speech, but you can think about how you could use those 30 seconds in an extremely impactful way. You want to be enthusiastic? If you're not enthusiastic about your brand, your job, they're not going to be enthusiastic about it at all. You want to be confident as well. Instill that confidence in the person you're talking to. So when you go to a networking event, like we're going to have later today, a couple of things to do. Keep in mind, 1, prepare your elevator pitch. I mentioned earlier, in response to the comment, that you should go to lots of career fairs, go to lots of places where you use an elevator pitch. First thing, make sure that you're prepared, so you have some sort of metric, some sort of way of saying, did I accomplish what I wanted, did I not? So prepare that elevator pitch. I recommend updating your LinkedIn profile. Everyone uses LinkedIn, right? I find it very useful. It's also not something that threatens people. You say, may we connect on LinkedIn? You say, can we connect on Facebook? Sometimes people are weird about that. You know, that's different. But LinkedIn, it's like, yeah, let's connect on LinkedIn. We should definitely do that. Bring some business cards. Do you all have business cards? Rutgers students, business cards?
Yeah.
So sometimes just having the business card is the way to get someone else's business card. Instead of saying, can I have your business card? You can pull out yours and say, can we exchange business cards? Dress appropriately. Dress for your aspiration. Why would I say that? Why do I want you to do that? What I mean by that is dress for the job that you want to have. Why do I suggest that? All right.
We get judged on that. When you're talking to a person, they're going to judge you based on the
Yeah. Does this person look like an investment banker? No. Does this person look like someone who wants a job in fashion? Yeah, they do. And they're going to remember that about you. Important way people judge us when they first see us. So, conversations. How do we start a conversation with someone? I divide conversations into two. Do you have a question? I divide conversations into two categories. Either we just have some sort of cold start. We see them on an elevator, they're minding their own business, and we want to initiate a conversation somehow. Or we're at some event, we're introduced to them, and we're able to talk a little bit more about the context in which we're introduced. For a cold start, I recommend keeping a few things in mind. Start with a reasoned intrusion. I'm sorry to bother you, but I heard your speech at the company meeting about departments working together. And I would love to talk to you about how my department can work with your department, and maybe we'll, and maybe it would actually work out that we do a project together. Sorry to bother you, but I see you have a folder that says McKinsey Consulting on it. And I wanted to ask you, do you work for McKinsey? Oh, you're here, you're a recruiter. Is it all right if I talk to you for a few minutes about that? In this type of conversation, you will end up making more efficient statements, such as the statements that you came up with in your elevator pitch. This is my brand. This is how I could be valuable to you. Even though you're going to start with that, I would try to find a way to create some sort of question and response. You don't want to just deliver your elevator pitch. The more you can engage that person in a real conversation, the better. Now for a warm start, you met someone at a networking event, you were introduced somehow. I suggest you start off with a contextual conversation. Instead of diving right in with your elevator pitch, talk about the context. So we're both here at this networking event for IT people. What brought you here? How do you know this group that started the networking thing? Or you're at an event, some sort of colleague from business school. You might talk about why you're there. In this type of situation, I would rarely jump in with, this is what I do, this is my elevator pitch, because I know that's going to come up eventually. We're at a networking event, we're there to talk about what we do and perhaps make some connections. I know that that's going to come up. So I will typically wait for someone to ask me, what do you do? Then they're ready to receive it, then it doesn't seem like you're being as pushy. Not that it's terrible to dive in with your elevator pitch, but if they're going to ask anyway, I suggest just waiting for them to ask. In this type of situation, you would have these types of questions and response in the context where you are, and you want to find the difficult part is you want to find ways to work in those efficient statements. So in this situation, it's like you're having more of a conversation, and as it comes up, you want to find ways to say, oh, this is my value, this is my brand, this is how we should connect. Any comments about that? Engaging in conversations. I like to say balance being passionate with being realistic. So I mentioned earlier that I hope you all are in careers that you're excited about. It's a great opportunity while you're in business school to think about truly what you want to do. And I know there's all sorts of temptation to say, I want to do something that makes more money, I'm going to do something that's more impressive compared to my business school colleagues. That's okay, but I encourage you to just always think about what you're truly excited about and what you're truly passionate about, so you can have real, sincere stories. Gosh, I was reading about Donald Trump's bankruptcy thing in the newspaper, and that was just so exciting about how bankers have to deal with that type of thing. And I would love to be in the position to do this or that as it relates to it. And I was in a past position before I went to business school where I got to do this type of thing that I really was excited about, was doing this other type of thing. And the balance to being passionate is just being realistic. I think the only time being passionate will hurt you is if someone looks at you and says, no, this person just doesn't really have an idea of what it takes to succeed in this business. This person is just reading, or watching some Hollywood movie about being an investment banker, and they think it's all glamour, like like whatever movie. And if they don't think you're realistic, your passion can hurt you. So do as much research as you can to have a realistic understanding of what you might do in this industry, and be excited about the things that truly excite you. Christian?
What if you know the specific industry you want to be in, but you don't know like a specific job? For instance, like you say you want to be in financial services, but you're not sure that, for instance, you don't know if you want to be an investment banker, if you want to be more operational. What are you doing?
I would say that's a great opportunity to think about a specific job. You want to be in financial services, so read as much as you can about different roles you could have in financial services. Do the research, find out what an investment banker would do on a day-to-day basis. Talk to investment bankers, talk to traders. The more you get into the details of that, the more you can say, yeah, that is really something that would resonate with me. And when you're reading things about financial services in the Wall Street Journal, you can say, gosh, that's an example of something I would be doing if I worked in that role. That sounds really exciting. And you can have that conversation with the recruiter. So the answer to that question, I would say, is figure it out. Specifically, what you want to do.
But what if from your perspective, it seems realistic, but from the person you're speaking with, it doesn't?
So you need to talk to people.
So, like, suppose you present a position that you want to be, and you backtrack steps of other, like, prior positions to live up to that, and that's your goal, and that's the path that you clearly see, and it makes sense to you, and it still doesn't make sense to them.
Okay, so, yeah, so you want to talk to people who are in that industry and ask them, is this a realistic plan? And
Is this the right way to go?
yeah, if a lot of people say, no, they're going to laugh at you once you get there, then that's good information for adjusting your plan. Yeah. So think carefully about it, talk to people to find out what specific job you might want, talk to people to find out about what is a realistic plan and how that plan is received in that industry. Maybe it's a more conservative industry that they don't like people walking in and saying, I'm going to skyrocket my way to the top and do this or that in the next 5 years. You're like, let's get, you got to pay your dues. There might be an industry where that is more common. Does that make sense? So with this passion and realism, and as you're engaging in this conversation, I suggest you be unique, be yourself. As I mentioned earlier in class, it's not easy to be yourself. It takes a lot of work. You need to think about a lot of things to be yourself. So often we hear, just be yourself, just be natural. This is a situation where you can't just walk in and say whatever comes to your mind. You need to think about how you can represent your true self in this awkward context where you only get 30 seconds sometimes to make an impression, where you only get 20 minutes to tell your whole life story in an interview with a recruiter, where you might spend the next 10, 20 years. Being yourself just takes a lot of work. Question?
It's usually a concern, you know, when you're saying be passionate, be unique, but a lot of times, I mean, there's something that I believe in a lot, and it's the word charisma. You know, if you have charisma, it helps so much. And lately, I've encountered so many problems that either go into different things, and the other day a friend told me, you know, why don't you come here once in a while and then we practice. You know, you come to me and I see what you're doing wrong, and I see what you're telling your answers are not the most appropriate one. But you know, it's not something that you learn, you know, it just comes with you.
Charisma, like it's something that you either have or don't have, is what you're saying?
I mean, I would think, right? What do you think?
I want to open this up and get some other thoughts on it, but I would say it's something you can learn to the extent when you're in an exciting role, when you're aspiring for a job that really entices you, and you are able to do all the things that we're discussing. When you understand specifically what you would be doing in that role, when you have a realistic plan that when you think about it, it just inspires you. You've thought about how it relates to jobs you've done in the past. You can draw on examples of when you got excited about doing that type of thing. That sort of enthusiasm is charisma. Sort of enthusiasm says, yeah, all I want you to come and sit in the cubicle in my company and bring that type of passion. That's charisma. And there's nothing wrong with having that passion as long as somebody doesn't look at you and say, you haven't thought it through, you're out of touch. That's the only limit, I would say, to being passionate, diving into thinking about what you might create, what you might be in 5 to 10 years. Does that answer your question? I've had experiences in business school where I didn't really feel prepared for interviews, and that's when I walked away thinking I had no charisma. I just wasn't able to impress anyone. I wasn't able to relate to them. And it was because I was thinking about how do I get these 2 or 3 lines that I memorized from the company website last night. If I felt prepared and I was able to draw on those stories that related to the job interview, that's when I was able to be myself. And when you're yourself and when you're passionate, that's when your charisma is going to show. I could take you through a process, I think, right now of asking you what your dream job is, and as we discuss that, we might see more glimmers in your eye as you talk about something that's exciting to you, rather than talking about something that seems painful and tedious to you. And the rest of the class would say, yeah, that glimmer. When you start talking about with that glimmer, that's where you should focus. Any other questions? Okay, so we're at a networking event. How do we stand? How do we do this? I recommend zip zap zoom position. Yes, thank you, Sadvik. So maybe can a couple people come demonstrate? Chinfu and Jay, can you come demonstrate with me? So Chinfu, why don't you stay right there for a minute? Jay, you come right here. Okay. So I like zip zap zoom position because we talked about how we've got some sort of thing in our hand, an imaginary thing of energy that we're going to transfer to someone. Just being a little bit more engaged is helpful to that conversation. That person wants to talk to you more. And it's an open position where I can send and receive information. I'm kind of standing off to the side, that's like weird, I'm not engaging with Jay fully. So I'm talking to Jay, we're having a zip zap zoom type of conversation, and then Chin Fu comes in to talk to us. So if I just stand, oh good, thank you. If I just stand like this, I'm cutting off Chin Fu. So I recommend an open zip zap zoom position. So I'm able to talk to you, I'm able to talk to you, and I'm more engaged that way with both people. I see it a lot where someone else will come in and then the 2 people who are talking will just stay here. It's weird. All right, thank you. Have a seat. Open to send and receive, open to all parties. So you've had a nice conversation. You've talked about exchanging information. How do you end it? Now, just because you start talking with someone at a networking party, or just a regular social party, doesn't mean you need to talk to them for the next 2 hours. You can find socially acceptable ways to wrap up that conversation. Sometimes I find if you don't want to be talking to that person and you haven't planned how you're going to get away from that person, you're tempted to say something stupid like, oh, I think I'm going to go now. And what do you do then? Well, I still want to stay at the party. I better leave now, otherwise it's going to be weird. So think of an ending scenario. Let's exchange business cards and stay in touch. I think I'm going to grab another drink. Yeah, be careful about that one. You're going to be tempted to say, I think I'm going to grab another drink. Would you like one? And then if they say, yes, I would like one, then that's weird. You have to go get them a drink. And they might start talking to you again. So I would avoid, I'm going to go get a drink. Would you like one? You might just say, I'm going to go get a drink. You might say, I'm going to let you roam around and do some more networking. I don't want to take up too much of your time. And then have these next step scenarios planned. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Let's follow up and maybe talk for 10 or 15 minutes if you have time on your schedule to tell me a little bit about how you became an operations manager. Things to avoid when you are in a conversation: complaining, victiming, apologizing. You don't want to say, man, my job really sucks. Nobody gives me anything to do, nobody trusts me. I just hate being in this industry. So I came here to business school so I can get a job with your company and it won't suck as much. We don't want to be that person. No one wants to hire someone who complains all the time, because they think if they hire you, you'll just complain about their company the same way you're complaining about your current employer. In addition to that, you want to be around people who make the best out of situations. You don't want to be around someone who lets themselves be a victim, no matter how bad it is. Okay, any questions, comments on that? Blake?
Why would an apology after the conversation?
So, yeah, thank you for following up on that. I didn't really mention that. So, apologize. What sort of things might you apologize for during a networking conversation? You might say, I'm sorry about having to ask you for help. I'm sorry about being at this position in my career. I wish I had more experience. You might say you're sorry about something you did that you think is awkward, that they hadn't thought was awkward, and your knee-jerk reaction to apologize for it only brings it to their attention. We talked about anxiety when you're giving a presentation, and we talked about this phenomena where you think you're doing a terrible job, and everyone can see how nervous you are, but the audience doesn't see it that way. They think you're doing a fine job. And by you apologizing for it, it just brings it to their attention, and it's not necessary. Does that make sense? Yeah, yeah. I don't know, do important people apologize a lot or apologize a little? I would say a little bit. Yeah. Someone who apologizes all the time is perhaps someone we would mentally associate with being at a lower level in our company. We would think of them, oh, this is not someone I'm going to put in an MBA role. This is someone who's a technician who's just going to worry about getting the numbers right or wrong. And in fact, they just told me they were sorry about getting my email wrong. It's okay. Great. We are now ready for our networking exercise. Except we've got water and cookies. We've got cups and plates. The trick to the networking party is balancing the plate and the cup in one hand and shaking. Yes, yes.
Most of the time when we go for this networking events, it is always one recruiter surrounded by 5 to 6 individuals. So, and there's always one person who keeps on asking the questions around them. And if you are done with your question, and you want to leave the conversation, so how do you interrupt that conversation? Because it is very awkward for me to touch somebody or to and say that it was nice to meet you. It is very awkward at times that you have to wait for that person who has no plans to wait. To interrupt him, to take the conversation.
Yes, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about. So you've asked your question and you want to leave. I think you can wait till for a break in the conversation and say, thank you very much, it was a pleasure talking with you. Now, if you don't see, if there's not like a second or two of actual dead silence, you can wait until there's a shift in the conversation. So I'm talking to Chin Fu, I ask him my question, he answers my question, and then Olga jumps in with her question. I might wait till Olga's question is over, but Paula all of a sudden jumps in with another question. But just that shift, even though she's starting her question, that's a good opportunity for me to say, thank you very much, it was great connecting with you. So even though there may not be that space, just the shift, I think, is a good time to do that, a good time to walk away.
If there is a conversation with something like this is going on, and you want to leave but you're not getting a chance, can you just walk away or it is always good to
I would say it's always good to say goodbye. Now, if there's not a break in the conversation, you could do a I think that's fine. You all have done this more recently than me. What's your strategy for getting away from a circle of 10 eager business school students in one recruiter? Yeah, wait for a break there.
I use this trick. I try to jump in for the next question, and then I just say thank you, goodbye, and then that's it. So I try to make sure that whoever asks next question. Like I'm ready as soon as that person's finished with that question, I'm ready to like consequently.
Okay, so Carrie likes the strategy of asking one last question and then saying goodbye once that question is answered. So that could be dangerous if you get into like a long 5-minute explanation of your question and then, yeah, any other strategies? All right, good ideas. So, I was going to show you the technique. So, yeah. So, all right. So you need to practice like the cup and the plate and balancing and the handshake. That's the key thing for the networking technique. So we'll just have some cookies and water. Practice your elevator pitches with your classmates. We'll do this for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll do elevator pitches one at a time. Any questions? All right, well, have some water and cookies. Practice your elevator pitches with each other.
Did I read your elevator book?
No.
I forgot to mention that's the other critical thing about it.
my business card.
Is opening the seltzer carefully. Let's do one of these deals. Harder than it looks.
Yeah. This cover?
We're good.
I got lucky last week.
No, I played against them. I had 37 points.
My team was terrible. That was their 5-figure. It's so nice. That's the funny thing. Every other year I've been trying.
Oh, it's the good one. I'm sorry.
This year, it's the first time I didn't say that. It doesn't Yeah, when I was back with all my players, 71. Peyton Manning, he is playing at 71. That was a good I love it. He had Peyton Manning and Joseph Randall and Arizona defense. He needed 17 points.
I don't know how it went.
He got like 14.
I don't remember.